Alright. Hello? Can people hear now?
Oh, are you
Yep.
working? Is space here? Maybe?
I
Yeah,
think,
hello?
okay,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, there we go. All right. We're
Sorry,
good, we're good.
let's start that again.
You start
Go
again?
on, Face, go on.
Yeah, let's start that again.
Nothing happened, nothing happened.
All my stuff was muted, which was great, so I just recorded 4 hours of scrims with no sound. Oh! But anyway, alright, so we were just talking about the fact that we have Face here, who's now like coach of season 1 winners of Contender season 1. Really exciting. So let's hear about it. Take it off from the top.
Alright. So you guys want me to start from like how the team formed, or?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, how like from Contenders, like how it started, pretty much like the journey, if it will.
The journey?
The journey. Take us through it.
Alright, so I guess we were like the original like 4 legs roster, and then we've gone through like a few iterations of that and gone through a few roster changes, and like before Contenders. So like me, Shoyo, Quats is like the core, right? And we've been together for over a year now, and we've been pretty successful for a lot of that. And then going into Contenders, we had some roster changes. Tung had gone, Tomo had gone, and Yuki had gone, and Yuki's replacement, so we tried to get in the meantime, had gone. So we were down a lot of players at the time. Managed to convince Geordie to come in. Got Bertlog, and we got Billa, like as he came back out of retirement for us, and it was
Made that step back into the fray.
Yeah, Bill was like a player that was like he was really good previously, but at the start he was really rough. But he worked really hard and got back into it.
So starting
And then
out, oh,
sorry, you go.
So starting out, as you were going into the first games of like Contenders, and like obviously your first game was against Jam, and we were pretty confident going into that, but you guys smashed us. And so I think there was a bit of you guys really found your groove after a couple weeks like of being together, because I think a lot of people were underestimating because of the changes that you'd gone through.
Well, against Jam, like we were always pretty confident about that game. It was like we'd honestly like the reason why we were rated so lowly is because we weren't playing very well, and we knew that we knew that we weren't playing very well, but we also knew that like on match time, like we will always perform a lot better, and it would take a lot for a new team like you guys to get to that level.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think a lot of teams don't like understand that if you play against like us or Dark-Sided or Blank Blue like on a match day, it's a lot different to like a scrim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, as well, we might as well say this. We'll rewind a little bit, because before coming into Contenders, of course, you made the transition, going to a player to a coach.
I was a player at the start of the season.
Yeah. Were you?
Yeah. It
you were,
wasn't
actually.
until like the last few games that he stepped down.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Racquet.
Oh, I have a bad memory. Okay. Look. Okay. We'll still slide along with that question anyway. So, this actually still works out, because you still have the experience to play in Contenders, right? So you know how that sort of environment is with the team, and you transitioning to a team that struggled, maybe coming from like scrim results or coming into like a bigger tournament stage as contenders. How do you feel that you yourself impacted that going to a player to a coaching role? Because in hindsight, things look a lot better, right? You guys had a gradual increase across the season in terms of your skill ceiling seemed to look really, really good, and that your players were hitting their stride on the right times. How much do you take credit for a lot of what's happened in the Contender Season 1?
It was all me.
Oh. Okay, go on, mate. Go on. Explain why it was all.
No, wasn't. Kraken was a huge fight. We had a lot of trouble. Bert will admit this, but we had a lot of trouble with Bert on Zen during this time. And there were like changes that we made before to the team, like how we approached the game. That happened. It was like in between that MGC where we had that week. So that was like we would change some things, and it really affected like a lot of things. So we just got binned. Like we went into the game, and nothing worked, and we just got binned. And like during that time, there was like other things that were changing, and it kind of led up. And then after that, I realized that like we desperately needed the coach, and we needed to fix. Berlog he wanted to go to, well, we didn't want to. We didn't not want to. We needed to get up a Zen player that was like more aggressive and could take more of the calling burden. And the Kraken was like the perfect player in that regard. So he's like aggressive, and he's like really vocal in terms of like discords or target caller.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that a lot of people were very excited to, going actually past the of course the Masterminds loss, where we're zooming into LAN. After you guys, of course, seeded second in your group, doing a very successful playoff run to approach LAN. How did you feel coming into the matchup versus Darksided? Because I feel like for most of the people who are predicting at this event, Darksided was like the most consistent in terms of people predicting that they would win overall, especially even pre-contenders. People were expecting Darksided to be like the favorites. How did you guys adapt to sort of try and clash heads with Darksided? Because Darksided were considered probably the strongest team at the time, and for you to really knuckle down and beat them in a best of 5 series is a real big testament. So how did it happen, Face? How did it happen?
Yeah, we expected them to like that game to be the hardest. So we had the boot camp prior, and we did a lot of preparation for them in particular. Yeah. And we knew like they've got players like Tomo, who's like amazingly consistent, and like LAN environment, consistency is like probably the most important thing, because people play worse. Like pretty much everyone plays worse at LAN, like mechanically, and then on like a team level, everyone plays worse because everyone's like a bit more hyped. And it's like really chaotic. It's a lot more chaotic because there's a lot more pressure. So not everyone is used to that environment because we don't have LANs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, or if we like, even the people that have LAN experience, they've done it like, once a year max.
Yeah. So
it's a lot more chaotic. And some like if you go against someone like Tomo, he's playing at his peak, and that's a scary thing, especially when no one else is. So yeah, we put a lot of time into just preparing for them and like what we would expect them to play, and we're really confident that if we just played our game, that we'd come out on top.
Do you think the outcome would have been any different if it was a best of 7? Like, do
No.
You still reckon? Do you reckon?
Okay.
Do you think
like Face is going to say, Darksided was going to take
it. I think they were lucky to get past 3 maps.
Oh, okay.
No, there was like a really bad macro error that the team made on Ilios, and then the next 2 maps that we won were we won quite convincingly.
Okay. Your thoughts on Masterminds versus Blank Blue as well? Like that match seemed to be pretty convincing in the way of Masterminds. Who would you have rather had versed if it was different?
I think they're both the same, really. They both rely on like, while Blank Blue are like a more even across the board, that they rely similar on the exact same strengths. Well, like their DPS players being really strong, and they both rely on the DPS play to win games really hard.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Masterminds could win. Like, well, that's why they did win. Like, if you rely on your DPS players and you get two DPS players that match up just as good as them, then you'll make yourself vulnerable.
Okay. So we can zoom past that, of course, into the finals. You guys probably the most convincing win out of LAN up against Masterminds in the grand final. How did that feel? As you know, as soon as the last game over screen came up, you beat them 4-0 in a very convincing fashion. The crowd was cheering. You walked up to your teammates, gave them a hug. That was the picture that I advertised on Twitter, by the way. Masterminds.
Great picture.
Congrats to ESL for doing that. That was a really nice shot there. But how did it feel, mate? Is this something you've experienced before in terms of like a LAN win at this magnitude?
No, I've come second twice. That's why like I went up and I hugged Shoyo and Klotz immediately, because like we've been together for a long time, and it's like it's been really hard. Like it's really hard to just keep going. It's really hard to win, and through that whole time you play a lot of scrims, and you play, sometimes you go through like 2 months where you just play trash, and it's like everyone's just arguing, and it's really hard. And then to come out with a win, it's like finally make something worth it.
Yeah, all that hard work finally paid off. All the pain.
All right, I've actually got a curveball question for you, Face. Now, coming into Contenders, a lot of teams, thought you were going to be hovering around, the Sombra compositions a lot more than other teams, and people thought that you'd probably be like the strongest Sombra team coming into Contenders. Now, of course, the Contenders patch was different to the patch prior, where the little when you attempt to hack someone, there's a small down period if you do get shot, which is a small nerf, not really that bad. But coming into Contenders and knowing that you're probably the most favorable in that sort of asset, did you think you played to your strengths correctly? Obviously you won, so maybe that's too much of an easy question, but did you feel like that was one of the attributing aspects of you being a lot better than these other teams that suited your style, or like it was a lot better towards their style?
Well, yeah, to win Overwatch, you need to be a team that recognizes the meta and be strong in the meta. And we had the best interpretation of the meta, so we won. Well, maybe not the best, but we played into it the best.
Yeah, but because that was a wise choice as well, because you had teams like Darksided. They sort of played Sombra for a bit, and then they drifted off away from it, coming into LAN. And then you had Blank Blue, who started practicing Sombra for like two weeks, which you guys certainly have a lot more practice than that, and they didn't look like as refined as you'd want with those compositions. Masterminds, they played at the start, it sort of drifted away, and you were the only team that sort of continued being persistent in that sort of respect. And you of course had the Junkrat dive that you guys were very successful with. Billa popping off on Junkrat and completely shutting down, especially in the Hollywood map against Darkseid, which was extremely dominant. Looking from my perspective, you guys had a lot in your wheelhouse. How do you efficiently prepare to have a wide array of compositions that you can play at like a top tier level?
Yeah, and like a lot of people need to have the understanding that meta is not just the comp. It's like you have to understand why the strong comps exist, and what that means like to how you play them. And I think It's a big difference between a lot of teams. You can just pick the heroes, but you have to understand why, and that will reflect in how you play them. It'll change. It will inform how you play them because you understand why.
Okay. Whipply, you go on. I'm going to enjoy this nice creaming soda that I've been slowly sipping throughout the whole episode.
So how has it been now, like when you step down as like from a player to a coach? Do you feel like this is like definitely like what you wanted to do? Like this is definitely what you're better at, or like really good at, or coaching and doing that kind of thing. I know you said that your team really needed it. How are you finding making that change?
I mean, at the start when I first started coaching, I was like, it was kind of hard to. I always really wanted to like say things like mid scrim, like make calls, but that's not the right approach. But in terms of just coaching, I always knew that I would be a coach at some point. I just seemed like things need to line up a bit, and you have the right players and like the right team, right org, right time.
Yeah.
And they kind of did it towards the end, but it was more that I could just see the fact that every team had a coach and we didn't, and there was like we really struggled in certain aspects, like just through scrims where like you don't have that one person that can like give you like just a general thing to
like a perspective.
Yeah.
So you really feel like
And
that definitely attributed to SDB coming out and getting that win. Just
well,
that
so
bit of
coaches are really important just to have like, it's just this, because every team goes through the process, like post map they go through and like, okay, we didn't do this right or we did this wrong.
Yeah.
And then having a coach just streamlines that process, so like everyone has the input, and then the coach can come and say like, this is like the be all and all, like this is like all that's well and good that you guys had said, but like the only thing that mattered was like this one thing. So it just streamlines a lot of the feedback that everyone gives throughout, like, because everyone's good players, so they have good feedback. You just need to make sure everyone's on like the right page.
Yeah.
Well, that's always the good thing about a coach, right? And this is why within like the open division scene, a lot of teams tended to disband because they have sort of a player hierarchy that's established, and they don't have like that sort of mediator to give them that sort of kick in the back and say, well, no, like we're all. I'm the overseer here, and this is what happened. Because players are always going to have different opinions, right? Because you have 6 different roles, all do 6 wildly different things, which means that they're going to have, so some of the time, people will have different opinions, right? And to have that person, sitting in a very special box up there in the Overwatch spectating client, that's bad, by the way. They have a nice, unique view on everything. So I think you bring up a good point there, Face. But forwarding on, now, of course, have you been studying Brigitte or like Hanzo and how to effectively use them? And do you think that could play to your strengths coming into next Contenders? Because obviously it's going to be quite different. Now, depending on what patch the next Contenders is, I'm not sure, like 1.24, right? So
the current live patch.
So the current live patch, right?
Yeah.
So the nerfs aren't that bad. They're probably still playable. I haven't really scrim spec'd too much on this current patch, but how do you feel that potential playstyle difference could impact your team in terms of moving forward?
Yeah, so meta change is always really interesting, and a lot of it's just the changes are pretty big relatively. Like Hanzo, Brig not so much, but Hanzo's really, it's a big thing. Just the amount of damage it does, and it also has relatively high mobility. So changes a lot. A lot of the old dive is still kind of good.
Yeah.
And Reinhardt's still kind of bad, but you can still run both. So it's like a weird mix at the moment.
I think everyone's still trying to find their feet. Like,
And
it's
yeah,
still
yeah,
so
and
new.
we took a break, and we're 3 days into the patch, so we haven't worked much out, to be honest.
Yeah.
But having a look at like the other regions, trying to work out why the Koreans are running Doomfist for some reason.
They know.
Yeah.
They know something.
They know something we don't. They always do. But do you think
there's
that
lots.
she is like? Because I've been speaking to a few of the teams that are now competing in trials and like competed in Open Div, that they think that Brigida is like, she has to be run on some maps. Like, she's absolutely necessary. How do you
No, I
think
don't
that?
think.
Like, I have a different view as well, but like how do you think that she affects the meta in that way, that people just find that she's essential?
No, I think she's not that big of it. Like, if you just put Brig in to the meta, like I think you'd probably just still run dive most of the time.
Yeah.
She's like, you can run. It gives you like another option to run against dive. You should, like, maybe you're a strong Reinhardt team or something, so you can enable it. But she's not like overwhelmingly powerful that you have to run her on certain maps. She's still low mobility and low damage, and she fits into like, she's like a half and half or like a third of, like, she's a DPS tank support player.
Yeah, she's very
hero.
interesting.
So she doesn't fit anywhere really. So if you're giving up something, just means that, like, if you give up DPS, another team will just go, they can out damage you. If you give up support, teams can out heal you. If you give it a tank, they can
Thank you. One thing that she has very high survivability, and I think that's where the draw is, that her healing output in the AoE isn't huge, but if she is making enough hits, she can get those stacks up and make quite a bit of an impact. But I think the biggest draw is like her survivability, especially if you have two tanks. And I think a lot of people are pulling her out as like a third tank and just doing like solo Hanzo or something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the weird thing is
it's the most common thing.
as well with Brigade. Now she is like a unique hero in the fact that she's not really like any other hero, because she fills different roles. Now, she isn't the best at any particular role. She isn't the best DPS, isn't the best support in terms of healing, isn't the best tank, but she like has her relative spot, and she patches herself in those areas, not as effectively as like a primary role, right? But she still like fills that little niche. But the problem is, right, you most likely want to run her with Reinhardt. She can be played with Orisa, and Reinhardt comps historically hasn't been too consistent, because the game overall is built around dive. When we look at the format of maps,
games not built around dive. Games
it's built around mobility, yeah, and flank heroes, right? Like having extra mobility and able to like take high grounds like Winston's and stuff is just always going to be so valuable. So like I think it bolsters Reinhardt compositions. Or Reinhardt compositions for a while haven't been like the best, right? So Brigitte, it's heavily dependent on the map pool. I haven't like had a gander at it yet, but it depends. If we have a map pool that can perhaps run Reinhardt with teams that do favor that, I feel like she will be getting a decent play rate. But I don't feel like we're going to have an overwhelming amount in terms of play rate like Hanzo, for example.
Yeah. Well, every map has like a high ground. Even like King's Road, like the traditional Rhine map, has high ground that you can abuse through every section of the map. So maybe you can force Rhine. You just have to say that you can't fight in certain areas. Like, you just have to give up ground, like a lot of ground, if your high ground gets abused. And that's like the thing with Rhine comps. If you run them, you just have to say that, hey, if they're on an actual comp that takes advantage of our weakness, then you just don't fight in certain places. And that, a lot of teams will do that, but unwittingly, like they'll skip. And a lot of teams will go to Ryan because it's a lot of effort to beat some Ryan comps. Like that's the thing.
The new map Rialto is like it is quite linear and flat for the most part, especially like point A after you get around that little bend is very.
Oh, it's flat.
It's very flat.
Maybe I haven't played it much, but it seems like there's a
bit
lot
of high
flanks.
ground. There is a lot of flanking.
Oh, there's a lot of high ground.
There's a bunch of balconies, and you have like
a lot of balconies.
Especially with snipers, like on that second point where you have like an established line of sight onto the third, like where the narrow pathway is. Like a dive will probably still be there.
I was maybe talking about like just after first point when you just have bridge. And I know there's the balconies up top, but it's not like you could put all your entire team. I mean, you probably could put your entire team up there, but most people like stick around. I don't really know. I haven't really played on it, so I only played on it like once tonight. So, but yeah, so like it just seems like a very after you get around that little corner on first, I think snipers can sit back and go back near bridge.
Yeah.
But like when you're in that courtyard, it seems pretty flat. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So let's okay, so let's look into the future into the crystal ball. Now, what's next for Dropbears in terms of contenders? You know, are you guys looking confidently into next season? Of course, the org has been very supportive in terms of they've been creating a ton of content for you guys on Twitter, and of course, with you guys winning Contenders Season 1, especially when having a boot camp for the first season, maybe that could be a thing for the future. How are you guys looking into Season 2 of Contenders?
Should be another easy win. No, the org. Should talk about the org. The org's amazing. Like we have the EHPC, that we have access to, like a esports high performance center, something like. Yeah. So our Sydney boys, they can go and play there whenever they want. But for the rest of us, it's just
That's awesome.
We only get to go there for boot camp.
Oh, time to live in Sydney, mate. Move.
Yeah.
Time to move. Get a Sydney Dropbears gaming house. Let's go.
I think that's like the end goal for like, but it like depends. Like that's end goalish of like, you know, Blizzard supporting the region and the region getting a lot of like investment and things. So it's not like the end goal for like S2 or S3. It's like the end goal for like
Overwatch League, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. But like the reason it's set up in a way like so that the teams that the org has can have like they'll have a house nearby and then people come, they play at the thing, like they go to game at the thing and then they go to bed at night. They go home and go to bed. Which is what direwolves do.
Yeah. So
they have the thing down the road where they sleep and then they wake up and they go play games and then they go back to bed.
That's the dream,
go
right?
Home and go to bed. Yeah, I guess.
All right. Should we cover roster changes or no?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I meant okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
So there's been some massive.
I know you're Racquet Whipply. Jam always has roster changes.
Oh, I know. I mean, we're still a big question mark over our DPS, so don't even. But yeah, so pretty much just like changes in general. Is that Surge picked up Willex? Well, they were Koi, Cuvian, but Willex is back.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Gusto. I don't know how early
and Oily.
This season. And Oily. I haven't heard anything about Tainted Minds and what they're doing.
Have they got a support player? But that's all.
Are they missing a support player? I don't know.
I guess.
I'm looking at the spreadsheet.
I think they got. Oh, they got So there's Baby Pro and
God's World, right?
that dude from Southeast Asia. What's his name?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I forgot his name though. Yeah.
That guy.
That guy.
That guy.
That guy. So
Yeah.
Oxidized.
is it?
Yeah, oxidized.
Yeah.
Oxidose is what Noz is saying.
No, I think
Oxidise? I think you
misspelled
misspelled
that.
Yeah, nice. Brigitte's picked up Render, moved Noz to off tank. Kangar picked up Jungle Jazz, and moved Darby to off tank. They got rid of Ziggy. Jam got a player poached.
Was another another victim of Whipply?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Of the whip?
Of the whip.
Yeah.
The biggest.
Or a lifesaver?
Yeah, definitely.
You've set yourself up.
Oh, I mean, he left. Like, not much I can really do about it. Like, not much I can do. He got poached. So
there should be a series of Jam, and actually, out of all the teams to have a team house, I would love Jam to have a team house. Like you'd randomly see like one of the players like, okay, fuck this, and you just see them like open the door, just slam it shut, like, oh, where the fuck did ATAR just go? Like, it'd be an amazing experience.
Be like Whipply just walking around. You go up to like they build like the gaming chair set up and they build gaming away. Whipply would walk up behind one of the chairs, pull it out, turn it around, and go tap their shoulder, and you are the weakest. And then they pick
no, if I tap your shoulder, you're
Whipply
out.
has the handcuffs. Yeah. Whipply has the handcuffs, and she's like, all right, put your hands up, you're off. We saw last game in Contenders. Unfortunately, we lost the map to Surge, so no, there we go. That's one of the many adventures that could possibly happen in a Jam team house. But once again, go forward with the roster changes.
No, really, we should just
digress.
change our name to like Survivor or something like that, and just like your tribe has voted. You're out. We need to put out your torch. No, I mean, yeah, we're looking forward to the future, and hopefully we'll have a long-standing roster. That's all I want. Not all of us can be like have bulletproof rosters, but
no, it's really hard. Like, if you are an ambitious team, you go through a lot of changes. It's just how it works.
I mean, and like
all the people that meme Whiffly, like they don't really understand that it's
it's fine.
hard. It's really hard to get a good team, and
I don't respond to it, and because it's just funny. Like, it's just really funny. Everyone just thinks that I'm just this really ambitious person. Just like, well, my players are ambitious as well. Like, they want to be the best. What players don't want to be the best? Like, really? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think everyone wants to have that number one team. But
yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard to make outside calls on rosters. Like, how do you know what's going on in that team?
Exactly, you don't know unless you're in the team, really. So it's all a big question marks. I mean, masterminds. Does anyone like? I've seen a lot of LFTs from players from masterminds. Like, what's going on with them? Like, does anyone have an inside scoop? No one knows. They're a big question mark.
I know that they've definitely got roster changes, but
yeah,
I don't know what exactly. I don't know if they will even have a roster for the next season.
This is actually pretty big because Mastermind's probably one of the longest running orgs for Oceanic Overwatch, right? These guys were in pretty much from like the start. So it'd be a shame to see those guys leave with the door open, or with the door shut, I should say, after their participation for so long within the scene. But from my understanding, a lot of different player opinions on that team. Of course, not getting the results that they wanted. But also, sometimes keeping your team together is like a glorified sim simulator. You have people with different opinions and making like this random noises like blah, 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 and then someone gets blah, 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 and then they start getting pissed off at each other.
Just don't take away. You just can't take away the ladder out of the pool though. Just don't stick it together.
Just Overwatch things.
Just Overwatch things. But like masterminds also own the spot, so it really will be interesting to see whether they just pick up a new team or like if they're able to rebuild. Like and
I don't think they will pick up a new team if that's how it goes.
Yeah. Do you reckon they'll just end up signing over the spot?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about that, but I think that if they can't put together a roster, then I think they might just be dead, and that like, who wants to buy a spot in Australia?
I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd be really surprised. And who wants
well,
to
if
buy a
like
spot?
the Contenders Pacific spot goes for 1.4 grand for the top seed, then I don't think you'd be getting much for the Australian
Is that
spot.
really the going rate for a top spot in Pacific? Jesus.
Yeah, the
How
top
do you
spot.
know that?
I don't know. Wasn't it
Yeah,
public?
Face no soul.
Eyes.
They're going to Pacific Contenders. Face just announced it right there. So
That might just
Ooh.
be a leak. No, it's been sold, but I don't know if the price was public.
Well, it is now.
Oh, my bad.
No.
You
This
heard
is
it
not the
here
first time
first.
something's been leaked on this podcast, right?
It won't be the last.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, also Brigade's picked up Joker. I remember they didn't have him. I think because they had Oily.
No,
think.
Joker was on the
Not
roster for Brigades.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
he
really
was
like
for a
my
bit.
people.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. And
Yeah.
then obviously Blank Blue have picked up Atar now. I think Micro's been put to sub.
That's not public information, is it?
Well, I mean, oh well.
It is now.
He got poached.
Jeez. Whipply.
Well,
Okay, well-
that's. I mean, what am I supposed to say?
Not the
my
information that. Okay, well, tough
Well,
luck.
it was my player.
That's okay.
I didn't know if it was public knowledge or not. Well, it is now. Unlucky. Sorry, Blake Blue, if you were trying to keep that under wraps. If it doesn't even go through.
It came from her mouth, not mine. That's so.
Yeah, someone said it was
Also-
already leaked.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
there we go. Probably an ANZ gen.
Probably an Ainsagen. Let's be real. And I'm not sure about Darkside if they're going through any changes. There's a question mark on them.
No, they look pretty solid at the moment.
they do.
But, in saying that, there's like, when one shuffle happens, then, 10 other players get freed up.
It is poaching
So,
season in
Puts
ANZ.
the temptation.
All right, now let's
Well,
talk
so,
about. Oh, sorry.
Well, no.
Okay.
No.
Go for it.
There's one more.
One more.
I'm no longer the coach for Legacy. Now, I can't reveal who is the coach of Legacy. But for me personally, I'm going to focus more on casting and creating content. And for people who may be coming through like open division coming into Contenders, I'll do. I'll try and help the teams come on up. Just flourish the scene from the bottom a little bit. I think the new coach of Legacy should help them maybe take it up another notch, hopefully. So that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, that's what's happening with me. So there we go. That's the announcement. Smiley face. Oh, go on.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what content you're going to come out with, Racquet. It's a new chapter, so I think you'll do well with that, whatever you do anyway.
Baby.
So, all right. So what I was gonna say is, Face, I don't know how much you know about trials or the teams in trials, but we'll test your knowledge, to try and make a few guessing games on who we think is going to make it out. I would say.
Who's in the pool?
So
Who do
we've
we
got
have to look
Serenity, Tainted Minds, Surge, Interstellar, Bin Chickens, Peeps, Angels, Pixel Esports, and Question Mark.
Okay, so which one of those is the Wind Trader team? Because I've heard the Wind Trader team has been like
Interstellar.
stopping.
The one that has int in it.
The one that has
Okay.
int.
So, okay, everyone, put your hands together for Blizzard. Blizzard, if this team does decide to make Contenders, can you please purge them down to the dumpster where they belong and move another team that actually deserves to be in Contenders to take their spot? please.
Can we not
Thank
have
you.
another alter ego, please? That's just
Well,
that's just what I don't want.
they need more than prayers to get them resurrected.
And we don't know what Clickbait's doing. He's kind of not sure what he is going to do anyway. We're not sure if he's going to submit a roster for alter ego or anything like that. Open div tiebreaker. It's kind of all up in the air right now what's going on. So we only have 7 teams to talk about. So we know Serenity, they competed in Contenders Season 1, was bottom tier from Group A. I think that they're going to make it through. I think that they're in again. I don't think, looking at the teams in there currently, that there would be any question about that. I just think they were in the death group.
Well, the main question is, here's the main question, right? With the teams that have been relegated, or, I guess that's the right word, or out of Contenders, which one of them would be the most vulnerable? Because now if Surge have Will X, because they will probably be the team that would look the most vulnerable to be replaced by like your bin chickens or something. With Will X and Surge, all of a sudden that makes that roster, that team a lot stronger. So you have Brig Yeats, who with Joker look like an immediate upgrade too.
They're not in trials. They're not in trials. No, they
really?
made it through. Yeah, they were, because Alter Ego was in Group B, and Alter Ego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, even their managers were like, everyone thinks we're in trials. No, they're through.
Okay.
So I think you.
Don't mind me.
Yeah, it's fine. So Tainted Minds, Surge, and Serenity. Ideally, you'd think that those, even though they were relegated to trials, would still make it to Contenders. You would think that, like, if they made it through once, they'd make it through again. So we'll just have to see. We got I'm looking at the spreadsheet. So on the bottom row of the ones that have just come in through Open Div, you've got Interstellar, which is the Wind Trader team. We've got Bin Chickens, Peeps Angels, and Pixel Esports. So Bin Chickens is the one with Lush, Autumn, Bust, Tyrell, Genesis, Leverett.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got a pretty good chance.
They're a good team, but their strength is their tank players. And their tank players are Winston Diva players. So they need to work out the meta really fast.
I mean, and if there is a time to get an upset, right? Like, this is probably the time for that to happen, since like a lot of these lower teams. No, actually, they've been playing on the patch for a while, of course, because they haven't needed to play on the Contenders.
And it's also the old patch as well. It's 1.22, so it's
really
just buff Brigade, so it's no Hanzo, so it's Hanzo with Scatter.
Okay, right. So, God bless it. This makes things.
This is the current Owl patch. So like that's good for them, right? They have lots of reference material.
Yeah. They have lots of reference material. You're right. So it'd be interesting to see which teams do their homework in that regard. And of course, so is this the patch? So is Brigitte nerfed in this patch, or is she not?
No.
Yeah, she's not. No,
they're 1.23. So
1.22. They're 1.22, and they have.
They're 1.23. They're the one after. I'm fairly sure. If someone in chat can confirm.
I'm 100% sure it's 1.22.
Can you look on
the? We have a vote.
Can you look on the Contenders one? I can't because I've got my thing up. It's
1.22.
Okay. 1.22. All right. I have been corrected.
Don't argue with the coach, Whipply. Come on, that's the number one rule.
All right, 1.2. So they are on the attendees patch. That's before Brigada, right? Is it not? Is it without Brigada?
No. Brig's in it. She's at the buff state with 150 armor, and then.
Okay. Is it Hanzo?
There's Hanzo. Is just old Hanzo.
Oh. Okay.
So it's Scatter.
Yeah, I thought it was 1.23. Okay. Yeah. Ooh.
I don't even know what 1.23 is.
1.23.
Is anyone covering that, by the way?
Covering what?
Covering the finals. The trials.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. We didn't have it last time. I think someone just POV streamed it, right?
Well,
it was Serenity versus the finals on trials.
Hopefully something does happen there, because that would be something that I would love to see, and it'd be a good storyline for these guys to come in. Getting spectator experience.
It's a round robin.
It's a round robin. Okay. Right.
Can we do a show match between between the two highest teams? Can we do a show match for that? if the teams would be up for it. Racquet.
Do they play
Racquet
the whole way
casting.
through? Or is it
Here we
just,
go.
Yeah,
is
it's
it
the whole
just
way
a
through.
yeah? So it's a round robin, and then they just have the last results, and then they
Okay.
yeah. Okay, that's pretty
That's
cool.
fine. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's fine. Alright, so then we've got Peeps Angels, which I think they had Smiley as their second DPS, but
he's out.
He left. So is it Yui, Dio, Kazette, Base God, Little Bomb? I think that they should get through. Like, they're
Yeah, it
pretty
depends
strong.
on the player
Yeah.
that they get.
Yeah, he definitely.
If they get Winter, he's probably the best. He
He'll manage
was
that
the
team
best
really
player.
well.
He's the best player in Open, so I'm pretty sure if they
Yeah,
get
yeah,
him,
Winter.
they'll go through well.
Yeah, definitely.
He's a player that's actually received pretty high praise considering where he was in the contextual matter. Like he started off at Knock Preds, right, at the start of Contenders, and then
I think he was on
he ended up
Pantheon.
He's on Surge.
yeah.
He was on Pantheon, then Surge.
It
Then...
was, no. He was on Pantheon, Knock, and then Surge. He was on
Oh,
Knock
okay.
for a bit.
He has
I'm pretty
team
sure.
jumped a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah, he's good.
I don't know much about his attitude, but mechanically he's stronger than the level that he's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a real prick. No, I'm joking. he's a good lad. He's a good lad. We banter all the time. But yeah. So continue on with the list, Ripley. Continue on.
So then we've got Pixel Esports, which is new org, which is actually formed by my old coach. So he left us to make.
Oh, they
his
changed the
own
name.
org.
That's sad.
They made
They're
their org.
the worst team. They would have been the best team, but unfortunately, they're the worst team now.
Why?
Because they changed the name.
What do you mean?
Fair analysis.
So
appreciate
Exist, Dewboy, Virginia, Bad, Wheel, Amber, and a lot of those, like Virginia and Wheel, have been around for a pretty long time in the scene, in and out of the scene.
Yeah, Virginia must be new.
I don't never heard of Virginia. Up and comer.
As in like new to the roster, right?
Yeah. So he
Yeah.
joined at the end of Open Div, I'm fairly sure.
So what's the rules for open teams with rosters coming into trials? How many players are they allowed to keep?
I think
Or can-
it's bloody hell. I have no idea. It's been so long. You'd think I'd know all the roster changing rules, wouldn't you? No.
Hey, you study them intently.
No. I'm not sure on the rules there. I think when because Witch Hunt came up through trials, but I knew that we had to have, from trials to Contenders, we had to have 3 standing members from the original roster. But I don't know if that's still the same. So I'm really not sure.
Okay.
So 6 plus 2 subs. Is the rules, Avril, for like the original members? Like, can they replace people? Is pretty much I think what they're saying for rules. Because I know they reduced the amount of subs a team can have from 3 to 2 for the new.
Yeah, so I think it's just if you have 3 people from the original roster, including the subs or whatever, then you should be okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is a roster.
Apparently
I'm
there's-
seeing that. Sorry, Racquet. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with Avril there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you get by in life. Just agree with Avril, and you'll be alright.
Yeah, because I know that every week during Contenders they open up the rosters, so then poaching season is in full swing every week. A new team member is voted. No, I'm joking.
So what's to stop one team to like just pick up, like Yuki and
There's no stop.
like half
Except
of
for,
Masterminds?
So I guess there is no stop for that, because unless they're on contract and can't leave, they're free agents, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
So who makes it?
What do you mean?
Who makes Contenders out of these
Oh, right.
7 teams?
Oof. I think it's going to be an interesting one between Bin Chickens and Peeps Angels to see. Actually, I think that Interstellar came first, but the reason why I'm counting them out is because they're going to get purged by Blizzard.
I think they will get purged coming. I don't think they
I
do
don't
the
think-
checks going the trials.
But they should.
Yeah, they should, but I don't think they will.
It probably would
Yifeng,
take
right?
a while for that to happen.
Yeah, well,
Yifeng?
Yifeng was only a sub for us, and yeah, he got purged. Same with Jake, Nectar, and Yifeng all got purged at the same time. Earl was earlier.
But Yifeng in trials or post trials.
Yifeng was playing for Pantheon during trials.
Yeah.
Apparently, like,
And then so
Yeah,
after
after
trials,
trials,
going into
after trials.
contenders, he
Yeah,
got
yeah,
banned.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it worked. Sorry.
So yeah, I think Interstellar they would.
I think that either they make it out and then they pretty much just. But we don't want another alter ego situation. We really don't, because it's just messy. It creates like a lot of whoever gets that team, they're just gonna have an easier time like in that group.
well, the problem is, right, like, if there's two sides of the argument in that, sure, if Interstellar win, that means they're the better team, even though they have a really rough history. I can understand why people, like, theoretically, if you want a higher level of competition, have them in contenders. I personally don't agree with that because of what they've done in the past. But like, looking at it in terms of another team's perspective, if they do end up getting into contenders and they have to resign their spot, now if you do get in and take over their spot, now all of a sudden you have like a sort of burden that you're wearing on your back, in that you don't even deserve to be in contenders. You're here to replace a team, right? Like, to me, that isn't fair, and the culling should happen like sooner, so we don't have that issue moving into the future. I mean, look, at least it can happen. At least Blizzard are monitoring certain things. But I think it is unfair if a team's just getting in on the fact that, you know, the team has to resign their slot based on history.
I think that's what happened with Skrilla though, when that whole thing happened, was that another team got in from trials as well, because there was five contender spots available.
Yeah.
So that I think that was also
different reasonings, yeah, but yeah.
Different reasonings, but still it makes for the competition to be less fierce, because it is like a spot that wasn't fought for top 4. It was top 5, so it got that extra team in, and it would have been a lot more fiercer competition, I think, with that extra. Though Surge did take some maps off a few teams, so it was interesting to see. But and like they're a completely different team now, but it was just at the time that was kind of a bit controversial as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Blizzard handle it, but like I hope that they don't get through simply because of the fact that they have that stigma towards them, and that it will make that situation a lot more awkward. And there'll be five spots up again, and then it'll just be a bit weird. So I think, I don't really know a lot about Obtainer Mines recently, but if we're going off by like contenders things, I'd probably say that they're probably in the most vulnerable position for the teams, simply because of the fact that Surge picked up Willex. He could probably carry that team on his back.
Yeah, so that's a
take
huge
it through.
pickup.
Yeah, massive pickup.
He's a top tier DPS player, so just like against these opponents, he can carry against. He can like 1v6 pretty much.
Yeah, he's a freak.
Hopefully, Willex like remains to be stable. I mean, he's a person that has like left several teams like randomly. Of course, Alter Ego, when he was on there, just like left, turned into an invisible man, and went into another universe. So hopefully, you know, he is a little bit more consistent in that regard, because he is a player with like absolutely astral talent. He's an amazing dude, and hope, you know, for the competition's sake, and you know, for my sake, you know, I like Will as a person. Hopefully, he does, you know, stay on that roster. Maybe he gets picked up by a better team in the future, if shown that, you know, he can commit himself to contenders.
It's really the risk you take, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get the carry, or like it's like a flip of a coin. So then we got. So out of probably these things, I'd probably say Serenity and Surge are going to get through for sure. And I think could be Bin Chickens and Peeps Angels. Granted that Interstellar doesn't, like, they do get kind of banned or blocked from contenders. I think
I've got no idea
who.
Someone will have to actually tell me like who's actually on their roster.
Oh, okay, Legendary 12, GRTK. Lex.
No, who's actually like who's their alts. So
well, Lex...
for me to rate them, I've got no idea like who's actually playing on these accounts. If someone would tell me who's playing on that team, then I would say that they could make contenders. But as far as I'm concerned, entering 12 is, I know, some silver. So
well, here's a
they
name
won't
you
make
probably
contenders.
know. Lex.
Yeah, I know that. That's
So-
literally the only name that I know on that
yeah,
roster.
yeah, same. I'm looking
Yeah.
at it now. I don't know them either, but this from what I hear. So we'll just have to do a bit of investigation work, I guess.
Wait, where's chat? Someone
Come on,
Sort of
chat.
that, chat.
Come on,
Someone
chat.
say they're off. Someone give me some. I heard Zapster's in it.
Oh boy. Fortnite will be in
Who
there
else?
as well, and then we're just becoming a super team.
Is Lord in it?
Lord.
Sure. You've got a wicked list that you've summed up here, Ace.
All
Oh,
of
here we
these
go.
players are gonna message you and be just like, no.
Who's his Zaps? Lord got dropped or
Ooh,
unlucky.
imagine getting dropped.
Winter?
Oh.
Thank you, Winter.
Oh dear. Well,
Alright.
that's
Thank
always
you,
going to be
Winter.
See,
trivial.
like
for the
they're
roster.
decent players. Like as much shit as
Shady
Bridges gets,
part.
he's not the worst player in the world. He's like above the level of most open players.
Like,
Well,
I
the
think
problem is with Boot is that guy, like, not only do you have win traders in that team, he's actually like been aimbotting, which is like what?
Yeah, they do a lot of.
Like that is literally the thing that Blizzard hate the most is aimbotters, right? Like in terms of being banned from like a tournament, that is right at the top of the list of Blizzard. Like, fuck you, don't do that shit. So if Blizzard do some thorough investigating and they do see something like on his record in terms of the amount of reports coming in, because they do definitely check that. I mean, like because I remember going back to like World Cup, in order to be a player, they checked like the amount of reports you got in order to be evaluated as like
stand
It's
up,
the same for
stand up
Contenders,
guy.
right?
a representative. It is it's a similar thing to Contenders, right? So Blizzard will probably be on the ball in that regard.
Having an account in good standing with Blizzard, I think, is a specific like PC term.
Yeah.
But what's to stop you just playing on a level 1 Smurf?
There's not. If it's tied, because they also specify that your account has to be tied to your name and your email address, so they can see all the accounts that are in that person's like name in the region.
Oh, okay.
So it has to be your real name, your real email address, and like that's how they do it. Because then they can see all
Yeah,
the
but
accounts
you can
tied
just-
to your name.
Okay, so all the other accounts what happens if the one that you've been naughty on is not under your name
Well, then
and it's free?
you're just free.
Well, Blizzard,
There you go.
give
There's
you
a
fed from
loophole.
face himself.
There's a loophole in your
Fix the loophole, Blizzard.
fix the loophole, please.
Fix it up.
Well, I mean, it's really hard for them to check.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Doesn't make it easy.
truly.
Yeah. So I've said who I think are gonna get through. Does anyone else want to put in input?
No, I completely agree with you. I don't even think like there's too much of a debate to the
No.
topic really.
Yeah,
It seems pretty
I
set in
agree.
stone.
Or like just depending on how I have no idea how good Interstellar actually is with their
Well,
actual players or their fake players or whatever.
people predicted bin chickens to be like the best, and I'm pretty sure Interstellar like confidently beat them in their
Yeah.
match. So
I don't know
They
if
seem
he's
to be
saying
pretty
Yeah,
good.
but that's also on the back of
I
a
think.
meta change.
yeah, true,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, but they've been able to play it
And
for a while.
Tainted Mind's a decent team. They've got Slits and Default. They're good players.
Did they put Trismail up onto main tank? Because it still says that he's a sub.
Oh, I guess so.
I don't know.
I watched a scrim against them the other
Did you?
day, I think. Yeah, it was epic.
Is it-
And I think I can't really remember. I didn't watch for long, but I think he was playing.
Okay, yeah. Then that would probably be it. Do you know who the support is for Surge?
Oh, it was a 4-3 scoreline. Oh, okay. I thought it was worse than that.
4-3. Were they
Alright,
best
cool.
of 7? Jesus.
Thanks for showing that up,
That was
Alpha. I
closer
appreciate
than the
it.
grand final for Contenders. Jesus. Sorry, that's toxic.
There we go. it just comes out quickly.
It just
The
comes the
whip just comes
toxicity,
out
man.
really
It just comes out. I'm sorry, masterminds. And yeah, so I don't think there's really gonna be like I hope the Tainted Minds get back in because like they did get into I think they came fourth in in that bracket, third or fourth, I don't know. They came last season, last trials. So hopefully they get back in. Like I mean, if you got through trials once, you should be able to get through it again, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
But
they
I mean,
didn't,
like,
right?
no, they did. It was Surge that got the 5th spot.
Yeah, but they got that because of
Skrilla.
Skrilla dying, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Tainted Minds would have been in Contenders anyway. But
Yeah,
I think
no,
that
yeah,
Peeps
Surge
Angels
was
could
lucky.
definitely contest them on that though. Chickens and Peeps Angels.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that'd be
think
good.
Peeps Angels look good.
Yeah.
Winter's in chat. Is Winter joining Peeps Angels?
Is he?
Yeah.
Are you Winter?
Winter's trialing for a few teams right now, actually.
I want
Always,
to leak in chat
Hot,
right
hot on the
now.
market. Hot on the market.
Yeah. Well, once a property.
Which team is Winter joining?
He's
Winter is coming,
trialing-
fellas.
He's trialing for a few teams. So I guess we'll see where he ends up. And then we'll have
Yeah,
to
if they don't get Winter, they'll probably really struggle. To be honest, I think.
Winter's
No, for real,
Winter's legacy.
Actually, no, they'll probably still get in. Like, they can probably just get any old projectile DPS bot, and
Yeah.
they'll, as long as they beat Tainted Minds and Interstellar.
Alright,
then they
Winter
should...
just said, have trialed, have been Serenity, whilst trialing, haven't made mind up. So,
that is a Winter thing to say.
that is a very Winter thing to say. Cocky, I like it. Alright, is there anything else that chat wants to ask Face while we have him? Before we round everything up, does anyone have anything that we want to cover or go over or anything like that?
Actually, but before we get a question, I actually have a nice joke. Now,
Oh, now that
only
you
a
said
select,
it's a joke.
only a select few people would understand this joke. But if Tainted Minds made it to Contenders and like all the teams had entrance music, song, sorry, like Tainted Minds would come in. You know WWE like type stuff where the players come out and then the music comes out. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You get the theme. Tainted Minds, their theme song would be Diary of Jane. Yeah. It's a Breaking Benjamin song. And of course, the Jane has to be reworded, respelt. But that's a good joke for people who are out there who might know the reference. So there we go. But yeah,
that's a good song though. That's a really good song.
It is. Yeah, Breaking Benjamin's a good band.
Yeah.
So has the chat got anything? No, apparently not.
We haven't heard anything.
My joke was that bad that it's completely demoralized the chat asking any questions.
Really appealing to a very niche audience. Who gets that joke?
Come on, Face. Did you get it? Come on.
The 20 people that follow OC Overwatch, and then the 10 people that know who's the coach of the worst team in Contenders.
Oh,
my former coach. He's not coaching them anymore.
I mean, that's not really like a burn or anything. That's not me being harsh. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
I know.
We just like
I just want to do calculating.
Yeah, exaggeration. That's what we do. All right, so let's say as we wrap this up, Face, if you want to give one piece of advice to those that are coming up through trials and coming into Contenders, those that haven't been in it before, what bit of advice would you say to them? It's
a future advice for who?
For teams coming up through trials and into Contenders, ones that haven't been there before, like Bin Chickens. Like, I know players from Peeps Angels have been, but like just a bit of advice going into it.
Have a lot of time, have a lot of patience, and keep trying, because it's hard. Like anything that takes this amount of time it just grinds you down. So
yeah,
you gotta be able to just remember why you're doing it, and even if you know you're not gonna win, like you at least have a goal like somewhere so that you can like center yourself like mid-season, or like when you just you know, got shit on for 4 hours of scrims and realize that why you're doing it.
Don't let it break
if
you.
it's worthwhile.
Because as
Yeah.
we know, like Div 2 open division teams, like a lot of them form and then break up. It happens a lot. There is a lot of disbanding happening. So having a long-standing roster, or keep staying together and not letting it get to you as players, kind of thing. Get to the team, any of the losses and stuff.
Mm-hmm. There we go. So make sure for people who want to come up in open division into Contenders, just clip that bit of when Face is talking, frame it on your window or on your wall, a poster, or wherever you want to put it. And since it was the words of the reigning champion of Contenders, Face,
The face.
what
face,
can
face.
go wrong? Exactly, face.
All right.
Why do you have face? You have that on your Twitter and your Twitch. Was face taken and you just decided to write it 3 times?
The face.
Oh, kind of.
The
My
face.
Steam
face
name
is
is like one face that's like a smiley face that's with another face, so it's like 3 faces. So
that's why it's the face. Fair enough.
kind
Alright,
of.
well, I
But
think
also my Twitch name that's just the one I could get.
Fair enough.
Pretty hilarious.
Alright, well, I think this wraps up our first season of Overtime. It's been a good one. A lot of stuff has happened, and I think in the way we'll probably pick it up again week before season 2. I think when we Racquet, so it'll be really good. I don't know. I think Bobby's taking a step back from esports, and Xenox has other things going on, so it might just be me and you from now on.
Well, maybe.
Maybe we might have some wild card people coming in. We'll figure it out. But I want to thank everyone who supported us for the last season. It's been really, really great, and all our guests that have come on. Thank you so much, Face, for joining us tonight. Been a pleasure to have you on, and congratulations for winning season 1 of Contenders.
Thank you. Shout out to 4, the grooviest person in the place here.
So yeah, thank you everyone who's helped us get it up and running and been on the show and been supporters and everything like that. So we'll pick it up and we'll keep giving you guys the weekly scoop on Overwatch AU Contenders.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you want to say about it before I close? Stop it?
Shout out to Legacy for giving me a coaching opportunity. That was fun to do. Thanks to all the players. Your great boot camp was fun, and it's really eye-opening experience that I'm sure Face would understand too. Shout out to Joker because you specifically asked for a shout out. You greedy bastard. That's what you are. But you know what? The season's been great. We'll be here before the week 1 of Contenders, so week before that on a Wednesday. And things should be great. So yeah, thank you very much for supporting us throughout this, and could tune in for some more stuff in the future. So take care, everyone. Follow our Twitter. I don't think we have it. Yeah.
We don't have a Twitter. Join our Discord. I think it should be. I'll put a link somewhere.
Okay.
I'll put a link in the thing after this goes down, unless someone else can do it because my Discord's currently being used. But yeah, I want to say a shout out to Jam, the org, the players, everyone who's been on the team, past and present. Thank you everyone for, you guys have been awesome, and yeah, so really, really excited to see what happens in season 2. So I think this wraps it up for season 1 of Overtime.
Well, this is a good closing quote, Whipply. There's 3 things that are certain in life: death, taxes, and jam roster changes. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night, everyone.